Under the watchful glow of a silvery full moon, a realm of whispered secrets and untamed passion comes alive. In the quiet corners of a medieval market square, where the scent of damp earth mingles with the crisp aroma of pine, the stage is set for an encounter that will forever alter the fabric of destiny. As soft echoes of ancient lore reverberate through shadowed alleys and hidden groves, our heroine, Seline, drifts like a solitary wisp on a cool autumn night, torn between duty and desire, between the solace of isolation and the haunting pull of forbidden love. In this enchanted world, the mundane hum of everyday life masks an undercurrent of tension and mystery. Villagers barter and trade beneath a sky studded with stellar jewels, all while secrets of the old ways linger like a spectral mist. Seline, a healer whose heart is as tender as it is resilient, moves through the throng with deliberate grace. Wrapped in a weathered shawl that bears the silent testimony of her struggles, she skirts the edges of the crowd. Despite being a necessary presence in the community, she has always felt like an outsider, an anomaly in the intricate dance of alphas and omegas, where power and passion entwine with rigid tradition. Yet tonight, something is different. The crisp air carries a hint of apprehension and a scent of foreboding, a dark aroma reminiscent of rain-soaked ash that stirs the soul and quickens the pulse. Every hushed murmur and fleeting glance from the bustling market seems laden with unspoken significance. As Seline seeks out humble supplies for her dwindling herbs, her inner world is a maelstrom of silent questions. Who is watching from the shadows? Why does the night seem poised on the brink of transformation? And most hauntingly, why does her heart inexplicably tremble at the mere thought of a man whose name is spoken with both reverence and trepidation? This man is no ordinary wanderer or rugged outsider. His reputation, shrouded in mystery and born of whispered legends, speaks of a silent alpha whose very presence commands both awe and fear. Known only as Cashion, a figure of dark allure and formidable power, he has stepped in and out of Seline's life like a spectral force, leaving behind traces of cold command and unyielding desire. His rare appearances in the village, long past the fading echoes of ancient rites, serve as both a reminder and a warning. Some bonds are marked in fire and sealed in ice. The market transforms into a theater of destiny the moment his gaze cuts through the throng. With each measured step, Cashion exudes an almost predatory grace, an aura that demands attention, even as it cloaks him in enigma. As he approaches, every detail sharpens. The low murmur of voices dims into silence, and time itself seems to pause in anticipation. Seline's thoughts whirl with both dread and a deep, perplexing longing. Her soul, hardened by years of isolation and quiet rebellion, finds itself inexplicably stirring with hope and defiance. For in Cashion's silent command lies the promise of change, a promise that her existence, confined to the periphery of a cruel and unyielding order, might yet be rewritten in the language of passion and destiny. In that charged instant, as the unseen threads of fate interlace their lives, Seline becomes painfully aware of the inner battle raging within her. Doubts and desires, ancient as the moonlit woods, wrestle for dominion over her heart. She is caught between two worlds, the pragmatic realm of healing and solitary refuge, and the tumultuous vortex of power and intimacy that Cashion embodies. The cool night air, laced with the bittersweet fragrance of pine and possibility, seems to whisper to her of hidden freedoms and uncharted territories of the soul. Every whispered promise of the wilderness, every rustle among the trees, speaks to the unyielding mystery of the world around her. A world where every shadow might conceal an ally or an adversary, and where every step taken in the night is a plunge into the depths of desire and danger. Under the haunting luminescence of the moon, Seline's resolve is tested, her spirit poised on the threshold of irrevocable change. As she stands silently in the embrace of a world that is both beautiful and perilous, the spark of destiny ignites. Spark that threatens to disrupt the old order and herald the rise of a new era, defined not by fear and conformity, but by truth, passion, and the undying power of the human heart. In this transcendent moment, set against a backdrop of timeless beauty and relentless conflict, the beginning of a fated journey unfolds. It is a journey woven with cinematic grandeur and intimate whispers, a journey that promises unexpected twists, heart-wrenching choices, and a love that defies both mortal boundaries and ancient edicts. And as the night deepens, the silence of the world around her seems to echo one simple truth. Sometimes, the most profound revolutions begin with the quietest of marks, leaving echoes that resonate through eternity. Beneath the gentle luminescence of a waning full moon, the market square awakens with a quiet vibrancy that seems to pulse with hidden secrets. The evening air is filled with a delicate interplay of scents, rich, damp earth mingling with the fresh, bracing aroma of pine, and the soft murmur of discreet conversations drifts like a lullaby among the gathered villagers. Each breath carries a promise of untold stories and secret meetings, while the subtle clinking of coins and rustling of fabric creates a background symphony reminiscent of an ancient ritual. In this ephemeral world, Seline moves gracefully through the crowd, her presence at once essential yet inconspicuous. Dressed in muted tones that blend with the twilight, she clutches a weathered shawl around her shoulders, a simple armor against both the chill of the night and the harsh judgments of pack politics. Despite the outward normalcy of village life, her heart beats with an anxious cadence. Every step reveals an internal dialogue loaded with self-doubt and determination. As a healer, she has always skirted the boundaries of the clan's rigid hierarchy, a reluctant participant in a system that privileges alphas and omegas over those who mend the broken and soothe the wounded. Seline's eyes dart from one shadowed stall to another, absorbing the scene with both awe and trepidation. Around her, the market brims with life. Stall vendors call out their wares in hushed tones. The rustle of parchment and the shimmer of fresh produce punctuate the gentle hum of bartering, and friendly laughter occasionally cuts through the ambient murmur. Yet beneath these surface interactions, an unspoken tension weaves its way through the crowd. A tension that suggests that every smile hides a secret, and every nod conceals a challenge. As she passes by the clusters of chattering villagers and rugged shifters exchanging goods, Seline's thoughts grow pensive. She is painfully aware of the eyes that occasionally meet hers, a blend of pity, curiosity, and cautious respect. These glances remind her that despite her indispensable skill, as a healer, she occupies an isolated niche in a world governed by rigid power plays. In a society where the bonds of blood and destiny dictate one's worth, her quiet defiance resonates with every whispered word and lingering gaze. There is a deep internal conflict that churns within her, the need to belong and protect those she cares for versus the desire to remain distant from a maelstrom of dominance and cruelty. Every so often, a slight breeze carries a hint of something unexpected, a trace of smoke, the distant cry of a nocturnal creature, that momentarily snaps her attention away from the ebb and flow of the market. These brief interruptions stir a latent sense of foreboding within her, as if the very environment is preparing to reveal a truth too potent to ignore. And in these moments of stillness amid chaos, the market's vibrant cadence softens into a haunting, anticipatory whisper, a murmuring prelude to change that sends a shiver along her spine. The market, with its lively exchanges and quiet undercurrents, mirrors Seline's own state of being, caught between the familiar and the unknown. She clutches a small bundle of herbs close to her heart, a subtle reminder of her craft and her roots in the healing arts, while her mind drifts to the inevitability of a coming turning point. Her internal monologue is peppered with cautious questions. Will tonight be the night that fate pushes her further into a world where power and passion collide? Is she ready to confront the darkness that has long lurked at the edges of her life, hidden beneath the surface of everyday existence? Even as she moves deliberately through the labyrinth of market stalls and twilight shadows, the atmosphere seems to shift imperceptibly, an almost unnoticeable tightening of the air, as if the world is holding its breath. This subtle change is the herald of an imminent transformation, a promise of an encounter that will disrupt the carefully maintained order of her existence. It is as if the market itself, with its intricate play of light and darkness, is signaling that every step she takes is drawing her nearer to a destiny she has long tried to outrun. In this charged moment, the interplay of ordinary life and extraordinary fate is palpable. Seline feels a curious weight in her heart, a mixture of anxiety and anticipation, as if the universe is converging on this one space, this single night, where every whisper and every shadow carries a clue to what is about to unfold. The market, vibrant and mysterious, becomes a living tapestry that weaves together the lives of all who dare to dream and defy the constraints imposed by ancient customs. And so, as she navigates this realm of subtle promises and unspoken truths, Seline senses that something monumental lies just beyond the borders of familiarity. The murmurs of the market square, as transient and delicate as they are, seem to carry within them the seeds of impending change, a change that will soon force her to confront the enigma of her existence and challenge the very foundations of the world she thought she knew. As Seline moved deeper into the market's vibrant labyrinth, the hum of whispered conversations and measured steps seemed to swell into an intricate symphony of portents. Each stall, lit by the soft glow of lanterns hanging like captured fireflies, was alive with the rustle of parchment and the murmurs of traders. Here, among crates of carefully selected herbs and bundles of dried spices, she sought the supplies she needed, ingredients that sustained her healing craft, even as her inner world churned with uneasy anticipation. Between stalls, furtive exchanges and hurried glances shared names that carried a heavy resonance. "Marcus," one voice murmured, laden with a mix of admiration and caution, while another recalled with equal fervor the silent, almost spectral presence of someone known only by hushed legends, Cashion. The mere utterance of his name stirred a ripple through the marketplace. It was as though the letters themselves held a power that could both inspire reverence and evoke dread. Seline's mind involuntarily wandered to those fragmented moments of recollection, fleeting memories of the silent alpha's dramatic appearances that had, on more than one occasion, sent a shiver down her spine. In the midst of collecting a modest bundle of lavender and foxglove from an aged merchant, she caught a glimpse of dark eyes that held a storm of unspoken memories. These eyes belonged to none other than Cashion, the man whose presence seemed to linger at the edges of every conversation like a foreboding omen. Although she had never truly felt his gaze until now, the sensation of his latent power was palpable, echoing in the quiet spaces of her mind. It was as if each mention of his name summoned a silent, imposing figure whose reputation was built on enigmatic acts of force and quiet dominance. Just then, a familiar voice broke through her reverie. "Seline, you always seem to find a way to blend into the shadows," teased Leora, a close friend whose laughter was as warm as the flickering candlelight that illuminated her smile. Leora's eyes, sparkling with playful mischief, contrasted sharply with the somber mood of the market. "Is it the herbs that keep you hidden, or is it your knack for avoiding attention?" she added, tilting her head in gentle mockery that nonetheless carried the weight of genuine concern. Seline offered a soft smile, though her eyes betrayed the storm of conflicts raging inside her. "Maybe it's both," she replied, her tone light yet edged with the gravitas of unspoken truths. As Leora helped her sort through the various supplies, their conversation interwove teasing banter with subtle, deeper concerns, a testimony to the unbreakable bond that had formed between them amid the pressures of their world. Leora's gentle teasing served as both a comfort and a reminder that even in the most turbulent of times, there were moments of levity and genuine care. Amid their exchange, murmurs of patrols and rumors began to swell around them. Faint, hurried, words carried on the air, snatches of conversation mentioning increased watchfulness along the ridge and the stirring of uneasy alliances. The market, once a haven of routine trade, now pulsed with the electricity of impending change. Seline felt her pulse quicken as the familiar cadence of her daily life was disrupted by these undercurrents of alarm and anticipation. At that precise moment, a sudden shift in the ambient noise caused the two friends to fall silent. The ambient chatter and rustle of activity around them seemed to pause, as if the market itself had drawn a collective breath. A cold shiver raced along Celine's spine, and she instinctively clutched the small bag of supplies to her chest. It was in that pregnant pause, where time seemed to hang suspended under the moon's watchful eye, that a dark silhouette materialized at the edge of the bustling crowd. Cashion had arrived. The atmosphere shifted irrevocably as his presence seeped into every corner of the market. A hush fell over the onlookers like a soft, pervasive fog. Celine's heart hammered in her chest, her body tensing in response to the overwhelming aura of authority that radiated from him. Cashion moved with deliberate predatory grace, a silent force that commanded attention without uttering a word. His eyes, dark and unfathomable as the depths of a forgotten well, swept over the throng with calculated intent, leaving a trail of palpable tension in his wake. Leora's teasing smile faded into a look of stark recognition, her gaze locking with Celine's in an unspoken understanding of the significance of his return. For a moment, the mundane bustle of the market was completely eclipsed by the arrival of this enigmatic figure, an arrival that promised both imminent danger and an unstoppable stirring of long-dormant desires. In that charged instance, as the crowd collectively held its breath, the market transitioned from an ordinary scene of commerce into a stage set for an electrifying encounter. The murmurs of whispered names grew louder, imbued with a mixture of awe, trepidation, and anticipation of the events that were now about to unfold, a turning point that would irrevocably alter Celine's world. Under the gathering gloom of a moonlit sky, the market's ambient murmur seemed to dwindle into an expectant silence, as if nature itself awaited the unfolding of destiny. From the depths of the surrounding shadows emerged Cashion, an unmistakable figure whose presence sliced through the crowd with an almost otherworldly precision. His movement was deliberate, every step measured and imbued with a palpable authority that momentarily arrested the flow of life in the market square. In that charged moment, time appeared to slow. The ambient glow of lanterns caught in a suspended dance with the dark, and every onlooker felt the electric weight of his silent proclamation. Seline, still clutching her bag of herbs, was instantly rooted to the spot. Her heart pounded in a deafening cadence, echoing her inner tumult as though trying to break free from its confines. The familiar rhythm of her breath faltered as her eyes met the burning intensity of Cashion's gaze. Eyes that flared like molten liquid fire, fierce and all-consuming. In that gaze, she found a mingling of controlled power and tumultuous emotion, a storm barely contained beneath an icy exterior. Each look from him was a challenge, a silent dare that sent shivers through her entire being. As Cashion advanced, his silhouette grew more distinct against the backdrop of the subdued market. The ambient chatter gradually receded into a collective hush, as if the world around them acknowledged the gravity of his presence. The crowd parted subtly, yielding a pathway that seemed solely reserved for him, a path that led straight to Seline. Every step he took resonated with an echo of authority that reverberated in her bones, while the soft rustling of his dark coat added to the crescendo of the moment. Then, with a slow and deliberate movement that commanded attention beyond measure, Cashion halted right beside Seline. The instant their physical spaces converged, the air around them thickened with a charged tension, mingling unspoken desire and latent danger. In that suspended moment, the lingering sense of pine, damp earth, and a whiff of impending rain blended with the soft murmur of the onlookers, a moment that seemed to exist outside the ordinary bounds of time and space. "Stand with me at the gathering." Cashion's voice resonated low and authoritative, each syllable crisp and laden with meaning, as if carved out of the very night itself. "At the coming full moon, You will be by my side." His words were not a suggestion but a command, a silent decree that left no room for debate. In a tone that was both gentle and unyielding, he continued, "Your mark, Seline, is now etched into the fabric of fate. It is not merely a sign of alliance. It is my claim, a symbol that binds your destiny with mine." In that moment, Seline felt the weight of his command settle upon her like an invisible shroud. The jar of herbs she'd been holding trembled in her grasp, as if echoing the frantic pace of her heart. She could feel a subtle, almost imperceptible warmth emanating from the spot on her shoulder, a silent whisper of a mark that had been left behind, a spectral imprint that radiated both promise and peril. The contact of his hand had been fleeting, yet indelible. It was as though his very essence had seeped into her skin, leaving behind a mark that glowed with an enigmatic intensity, a mark that signified a new beginning forged in the crucible of the night. For a long moment, the world around them was reduced to a single breathtaking tableau, a gallery of hushed gasps and locked stares, where every individual present was suspended in silent awe. Seline's internal world swirled with conflicting emotions. The terror of relinquishing control, the unexpected thrill of a bond formed in that very instant, and an undeniable curiosity about the journey that now lay before her. The mark on her skin pulsed faintly, a quiet reminder of the unspoken covenant that had just been sealed, a covenant that would forever tether her fate to the enigmatic power of Cashion. As swiftly as the moment had crystallized, a dense, eerie quietude fell over the market square. The once bustling market resumed its murmured routine, yet something profound had shifted. The remnants of Cashion's presence lingered in the still air, a chill that hinted at transformations yet to come, and an undercurrent of destiny that had been irrevocably altered. In that heavy silence, every soul present seemed to sense that nothing would ever remain the same. The atmosphere, laden with a mix of wonder and foreboding, foreshadowed an imminent upheaval that would redefine loyalties, ignite forbidden passions, and challenge the very foundations of the pack's old order. With his final penetrating gaze lingering on Seline, Cashion turned and melded back into the enveloping darkness, leaving behind an indelible imprint on her heart and on the soul of the night itself. The market square, now transformed by this fateful encounter, began a subtle exhale, a shared breath of both relief and apprehension, as the storm of destiny silently gathered force in the unseen depths of the shadows. After the haunting echo of Cashion's mark had faded into the cool night, Seline found herself stepping away from the vibrant energy of the market and into the quiet embrace of darkness. The bustling square, with its lingering whispers and secret glances, melted away behind her as she made her way toward the modest sanctuary of her cottage. The once charged atmosphere now gave way to an almost imperceptible calm, a silence that was both soothing and unnerving. The narrow, winding path led her through a forest, where ancient trees stood as silent sentinels, their gnarled branches casting long, twisted shadows upon the ground. The air was cool and damp with dew, each breath filled with the earthy aroma of moss and loam. With every step, the landscape seemed to murmur old secrets, as if the land itself remembered the echoes of legends long past. Yet in these rustling leaves and whispering winds, Seline could not shake the remembrance of Cashion's touch, a subtle warmth that still lingered on her skin, a reminder of that fateful encounter in the market. Her mind swirled with thoughts as she journeyed, each step accompanied by a silent dialogue of wonder and apprehension. The forest, veiled in a silvery haze under the moon's pale glow, felt almost sentient. Shadows moved in the corner of her eye, and the subtle crunch of leaves beneath her feet punctuated her quiet contemplation. Somewhere in the distance, a solitary owl hooted, its call resonating deeply with her inner solitude. As she pressed on, the delicate interplay between nature's beauty and its hidden dangers heightened her inner unease. Every rustle in the underbrush and every shift of the wind seemed to suggest unseen eyes were watching her progress, recording each cautious step she took. Seline's thoughts wrestled with the memory of the market, the commanding presence of Cashion, the fierce intensity of his molten eyes, and the irrevocable mark that he had left behind, a mark both beautiful and burdened with promise. That touch, as fleeting as it was, had stirred a complex storm of emotions within her. Amid the quiet of the woodland trail, these memories felt magnified, echoing with bittersweet intensity as if trying to carve their way deeper into her soul. The memory was a secret companion, always there in the background, urging her towards a destiny she had not fully chosen yet, but could no longer ignore. As the path neared her cottage, a modest, ivy-clad structure tucked away at the edge of the forest, an unsettling sensation prickled at the back of her neck. The dense canopy above and the enveloping darkness conspired to create an atmosphere that was almost tangible with anticipation. Every instinct urged caution, every hidden sound a potential omen. The serenity of the night was shattered by an inexplicable tension that hinted at external forces gathering in the silence. Finally, as she reached the familiar wooden door of her cottage, a chill swept through her, as if the natural world itself was preparing for a storm. The quiet moment of solitude that she had expected to embrace was abruptly interrupted by a sharp staccato knock at the door. A knock that was neither gentle nor part of the usual creaks of her humble home. It was a sound that sent a jolt of apprehension through her, reverberating off the time-worn planks of the door. For a fleeting moment, Seline hesitated, her hand still hovering over the door's worn surface. In that heart-stopping pause, her mind raced through possibilities. Who could be calling at this late hour? The silence of the forest and the lingering ethereal scent of the market now felt ominously pregnant with meaning. Every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary visitor. It was as if an unseen presence had followed her from the market, keeping careful watch over the trace of magic and tension she carried. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she slowly lowered her hand, the small bundle of herbs in her grasp trembling almost as much as her own heart. Memories of Cashion's measured command intermingled with the trepidation of being observed. Those intense, heavy moments at the market now resurfaced with each beat of her heart. The knock came again, slightly louder this time, echoing in the space between the quiet interior of her cottage and the dark uncertainty of the night outside. In that charged instant, when the mystique of her solitary journey collided with the abrupt intrusion of destiny, Seline felt that the delicate balance of her world was shifting yet again. The gentle, reflective solitude of her home was about to be pierced by a new disturbance, a new challenge that would force her to confront not only the external dangers that lurked in the night, but also the turbulent emotions that had been stirred by the enigmatic alpha. And so, standing at the threshold of her sanctuary, Seline braced herself for whatever new mystery was about to unfold. The sound of that ominous knock reverberating through the stillness like a harbinger of the trials yet to come. In the quiet depths of midnight, Seline's cottage became a stage for an unexpected reunion, a confrontation that would blur the boundaries between solace and strife. The rhythmic tap of rain against the window pane provided a constant, soft percussion, while the darkness beyond seemed to pulse with a secret heartbeat. Just as the tension of the ominous knock began to settle into a fragile calm, the door creaked, open to reveal the unmistakable silhouette of Cashion. There, bathed in the muted glow of a solitary lantern, he stood, commanding and enigmatic, as if the very night had summoned him back from the shadows. Cashion's presence filled the narrow entryway with an almost electric intensity. His eyes, dark and smoldering like molten liquid fire, met Seline's in a silent exchange that conveyed both reassurance and an unspoken urgency. The air between them was charged, every heartbeat reverberating with the gravity of what was to come. Seline could feel a protective warmth emanating from him, a guardian's embrace that offered solace even as it stirred the turbulent depths of her hidden desires. The memory of his previous touch, the lingering imprint upon her skin, sparked a complex interplay of longing and apprehension as she hesitantly stepped aside, allowing him to slip into the intimate confines of her home. "Why are you here, Cashion?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper, carrying the weight of countless unvoiced questions. Her tone held a delicate blend of vulnerability and determination, a stark contrast to the resolute calm that radiated from him. The dim light revealed the sharp contours of his face, etched with silent authority, his expression unreadable yet fiercely compelling. His reply was measured, his voice low and resonant, as if the secrets of countless nights lay behind every syllable. "I came because fate does not permit us to wander separately through these shadows, Seline. There are matters that demand our attention, and words unsaid that must be spoken." His words, imbued with both command and tenderness, enveloped her in a mixture of reassurance and mounting tension. Before Seline could press for further clarity, a new sound, a deliberate, insistent knock, echoed through the small wooden foyer. The rhythmic cadence of those knocks carried an unmistakable timbre of challenge and defiance. Celine's eyes flickered toward the door, and even as Cashion's imposing presence seemed to momentarily steady her racing heart, an uneasy energy began to coil in the space between them. Within moments, the door swung open once more, and stepping into the threshold was none other than Marcus, his features set in a smirk that spoke of both provocation and calculated mischief. His arrival was like a spark amidst dry tinder, an uninvited force determined to unsettle the fragile harmony in the room. Marcus's eyes, cold and calculating, darted between Seline and Cashion, his gaze laced with unspoken insinuations. Every syllable of his entrance carried the weight of a challenge, a provocative gauntlet thrown down in the midst of already simmering tensions. "So, the silent alpha shows up at the witch's door," Marcus drawled, his tone both mocking and menacing. "I must say it's a curious alliance, one that promises more than mere healing. What secrets are you weaving, Cashion, and what price will you ask of her tonight?" His words, though tinted with sardonic humor, betrayed the underlying intent to sow discord, testing loyalties and probing for fractures within the pack's unspoken order. Cashion's eyes narrowed, an indeterminate storm gathering beneath their dark depths. The space between him and Marcus throbbed with the impending clash of two forces that, though allies in the eyes of some, were clearly on a collision course tonight. "Marcus," Cashion's tone was calm, yet edged with an undeniable resolve. "Your game is as predictable as it is reckless. I am here for matters far beyond your petty intrigues." The retort sliced through the charged silence, punctuating the dense atmosphere with a promise of looming conflict. Seline, caught between the steady, protective gravity of Cashion and the cutting, provocative challenge of Marcus, felt a shudder of uncertainty ripple through her core. Her heart pounded like the relentless beat of a drum, echoing her inner turmoil as she watched the two alphas, each representing a contrasting force of nature, stand toe-to-toe within the sanctuary of her modest home. Marcus advanced further into the room, his steps measured, and his eyes alight with a mix of scorn and anticipation. "You cannot hide behind your silence forever, Cashion. The pack thrives on challenges, on the test of strength and loyalty. And tonight, you will answer for your claims." His voice lowered, becoming almost intimate in its venom, each word dripping with the promise of conflict that threatened to break the delicate equilibrium. Cashion's response was equally measured, his presence unyielding as he stepped closer, until the only sound in the room was the quiet murmur of the rain and the tense rhythm of collected breaths. "I have answered, Marcus, in ways you fear to understand. I chose my words with care, just as I choose my actions. Tonight, let us not overstep the boundaries of what is destined." His tone was both a warning and a plea, a call to maintain a semblance of order even as the undercurrents of rivalry began to surge. Between the three of them, the space crackled with unspoken challenges, silent threats, and the weight of unyielding destinies. The moment hung in a delicate balance, a fragile truce at the edge of a precipice, before the storm of conflict erupted. Every word, every glance, carried the promise of upheaval that would not only test their individual resolves, but also reverberate through the heart of the entire pack. In that intimate, charged scene, the confrontation was set. The echo of Marcus's provocative words and Cashion's unwavering reply lingered in the air, igniting sparks that hinted at the inevitable clash to come. The night, once a quiet witness to Seline's solitary journey, now bore the weight of a silent war between forces on opposite ends of a volatile spectrum. A war that promised to reshape loyalties, redefine power, and cast long shadows over the future of them all. The tension in the market had reached a fever pitch as Marcus stepped forward into the open, his presence commanding attention like a storm about to break. With a dismissive sneer, he began to openly challenge Cashion, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. "So, this is how the silent alpha parades his authority?" Marcus taunted, his tone laced with derision. His gaze flicked toward Seline, whose eyes widened in apprehension. "And what of you, dear healer? Are you merely a tool in his grand game, or do you have a say in your own fate?" His words, though spoken with a mocking lilt, carried the weight of an unspoken threat, a warning that Seline was now entangled in a dangerous duel of power. Around them, the market erupted into a cacophony of murmurs and sidelong glances. Vendors halted their trade. Shoppers paused mid-step, their whispers laced with a mix of scandal and disbelief. The charged energy in the air was palpable as onlookers leaned in, eager to absorb every barbed syllable. In the midst of it all, the echoes of power and defiance reverberated through the crowd, underscoring the imminent clash that promised to unsettle the delicate balance of the pack's order. Seline's heart hammered in her chest as she stood, rooted to the spot, a silent witness to the unfolding spectacle. All her life she had been a healer, skilled with herbs, gentle in her ministrations, and content to remain on the fringes of the pack's brutal politics. But now, as Marcus's jibes wound around her like a noose tightening with every word, she began to sense the cruel irony of her position. No longer was she merely a guardian of life. She was being weaponized as a pawn in a game of dominance between two alphas whose ambitions knew no boundaries. "Look at you," Marcus continued, his voice rising to a crescendo of scorn, "clinging to that fragile guise of innocence while you become the centerpiece of their grand design." His words were intended to wound, to strip away the last vestiges of her quiet dignity. Seline's mind whirled with conflicting emotions, fear, humiliation, and a desperate spark of defiance that stirred within her. The realization that she was now at the center of a dangerous power struggle hit her hard. No longer could she claim the simple identity of a healer. She had been thrust into a battlefield of wills where every whispered word held the potential to reshape her destiny. Cashion, standing a mere breath away, looked as if he had absorbed the insult like a challenge etched in his eyes. His gaze, fierce and unwavering, locked onto Marcus with an intensity that silenced even the most venomous barbs. "You forget," he said steadily, his voice a quiet promise amid the rising tumult, "that my decisions are not made lightly, nor do they come at the expense of those I care for." His words, though calm, vibrated with an unspoken threat, a tacit reminder that true power was not simply measured in blunt provocations, but in the silent enforcement of destiny. The public confrontation had transformed the market into a stage of raw emotion and turbulent ambition. Whispers of approval and disapproval mixed in the warm, humid air, each onlooker weighing the scales of loyalty and ambition. For some, Marcus's provocative challenge was the necessary catalyst to reign in the unchecked authority of a silent alpha. For others, it was a reckless display of power that endangered the fragile peace of their community. Seline felt the myriad voices of the crowd echo within her, a chorus of secret judgments and unspoken questions. As the duo locked into a standoff, she was acutely aware of the dual threat looming over her. the abuse of power by those who sought to bend her will, and the crushing weight of emotional manipulation that threatened to shatter her inner resolve. Each whispered remark that drifted through the crowd sliced through her composure, making her question whether she could ever escape the role that others had assigned to her, a pawn in a contest far greater than her own simple existence. In that heated moment, her reflection in a nearby stall's mirror revealed a woman caught between worlds, once defined by healing and gentle compassion, now grappling with the stark reality of being used as a symbol in a battle for dominance. With every breath, her internal turmoil grew, mingling sorrow with reluctant acceptance of the dangerous path ahead. The tension was so thick, she could almost taste it. A bitter cocktail of defiance and trepidation that foreshadowed the inevitable collision of fates. As the confrontation reached its zenith, the market air trembled with unspoken promise and potential loss. Marcus's provocative smile lingered like a shadow over Seline's features as he delivered one final sharp remark. In every game of power, the pieces eventually move or fall. With those parting words hanging in the air, a charged silence fell over the crowd. A single drop of rain began to patter on the cobblestones, echoing softly like a ticking clock, while Seline's eyes, heavy with uncertainty and newfound resolve, searched the faces before her. In that lingering moment of stillness, as the whispers of the crowd began to fade into a haunting murmur, she could only wonder, would she rise to claim her own destiny, or would she be forever trapped in the dangerous interplay of passion and power? The answer lingered like a fragile secret, waiting to be revealed in the shifting currents of fate. The night had deepened into an inky velvet expanse as Seline knelt beside the injured man, his labored breaths and shuddering form illuminated by the flicker of a solitary lantern. The air was cool and heavy with dew, its silence punctuated only by the low rustle of leaves and the distant cry of a nocturnal bird. In this isolated clearing behind the village, far from prying eyes, a ritual of raw vulnerability was about to unfold, a ritual that would bind hearts as much as mend broken bodies. Seline's skilled hands moved with both practiced precision and tender care as she gathered the herbs needed to staunch the flow of blood from his deep, unforgiving wound. The coppery scent of blood mingled with the earthy aroma of crushed basil and lavender, creating an almost hypnotic perfume that heightened every nerve in her body. The wounded man's pain, tangible and raw, was etched on his face in furrowed brows and clenched fists, and even in this state of despair, he clung to life with a desperate determination that stirred something deep within her. As she worked, her mind raced with a mix of professional focus and personal turmoil. Memories of her quiet days as a healer clashing with the recent, intense events that had upended her world. Her delicate fingers pressed gently against his skin. The sensation of his pulse, a reminder of life's fragile continuity. Yet, amid these somber duties, her heart still pulsed with the electrifying aftershock of Cashion's recent visit. Each measured touch echoed the lingering memory of his claim, the burn of his mark, the soft pressure of his hand, that still resonated along her collarbone. The cool night air seemed to conspire with her emotions, carrying with it trembling, shadows that danced upon the makeshift table of herbs and tinctures. It was in these moments of quiet intimacy, as her breath mingled with the slight rasp of his pain, that the unspoken bond between Seline and Cashion began to deepen. The space between duty and desire blurred, every whispered word to the injured man, every soft incantation over a simmering herbal poultice, felt imbued with a hidden message meant only for her and the spectral memory of the Alpha. As if summoned by her own inner call, Cashion emerged once again from the periphery, his presence as commanding as it was comforting. Standing just beyond the circle of light, he watched her with eyes that flickered like molten fire against the chill, dark backdrop. For a moment, the world seemed to narrow down to the two of them, Seline and the silent force who had already marked her destiny. Though he said nothing, his gaze conveyed both admiration for her gentle resolve and an underlying warning of the dangers yet to come. Stepping lightly into her small sanctuary of healing, Cashion approached, his presence enveloping. the space with a dual energy of tenderness and latent threat. "Your hands heal well," he murmured, his tone low and resonant, barely rising above the sound of the wind as it whispered through the trees. "But remember, the path you walk is fraught with more than just physical pain." His words, spoken, as softly as a nocturne, carried a weight that made the night seem even colder, yet oddly intimate. Seline met his gaze, her eyes reflecting a storm of emotions: fear, longing, and a powerful determination to reclaim her own fate despite the burdens forced upon her. "Every wound bears its scar, Cashion," she replied, her voice trembling with both defiance and fragile hope. "And every healing comes at a price. I am learning that my own story is intertwined with much darker forces than I ever imagined." Her words, spoken in a hushed cadence, seemed to capture the essence of their silent pact, a promise of growth even in the face of relentless external pressure. As she continued to bandage the wound and weave her carefully chosen herbs into a restorative balm, the intimacy between them grew more palpable. With each subtle touch, a brush of his hand against hers, the faint echo of his steady breath mingling with her whispered reassurances, their unspoken connection deepened, transcending the physical act of healing. It was a communion of souls, wrought in the interplay of life and pain, love and duty. Yet, even in these tender moments, the specter of danger hovered over them. The memory of Marcus's derisive challenge, the provocative taunts that had turned the public square into a battleground of pride and power, loomed ominously in the recesses of Seline's mind. The bond forging between her and Cashion, as gentle as it was ferocious, was set against the backdrop of an external war, a war where every gesture and every whispered word might have consequences far beyond the sanctuary of her secluded refuge. In that fleeting moment, as she pressed her ear to the rhythmic beat of life that persisted in the injured man and the reassuring murmur of Cashion's presence, Seline realized something profound. The ritual of healing was transforming into an unspoken, almost sacred connection, a tether binding her not only to the wounded soul before her, but also to the enigmatic Alpha, whose destiny was now irrevocably intertwined with her own. In the interplay of blood, pain, and intimacy, amidst trembling shadows and the cool caress of the night, she felt the stirring of a power that transcended fear, a power that whispered of love, sacrifice, and the unyielding promise of change. And, as the gentle cadence of their shared silence filled the night, Seline knew with an unspoken certainty that their bond was strengthening even as the threat of Marcus's manipulations loomed, a fragile yet potent ember in the dark, awaiting the winds of destiny to set it ablaze. Under a sky stained with the deep hues of midnight, the fragile barrier between duty and desire shuddered under the weight of an uninvited intrusion. The cool air carried with it a sharp scent of rain and pine as Marcus emerged once more into the secluded clearing near Seline's healing space. His presence was as calculated as it was provocative, a dark silhouette with eyes that glinted with mischief and menace. With measured steps, he closed the distance between them, his voice cutting through the quiet like a saber. "Seline," Marcus began, his tone both laced with mockery and laden with insinuation. "Do you truly believe that by clinging to your gentle ways, you can shape your own destiny? Or must you always be the pawn in someone else's game?" His words were barbed, meant to slice through the fragile defenses she'd built around her heart. For a moment, the air seemed to thicken, as the echoes of his challenge reverberated like distant thunder. Caught off guard, Seline's breath hitched. Her mind flashed back to the quiet moments of earlier intimacy, the lingering heat of Cashion's touch, the subtle burn of the mark seared onto her skin like a clandestine promise. But now, amid Marcus's probing, that tender memory was overlaid with a bitter taste of humiliation and defiance. "I am no one's pawn," she retorted, though her voice trembled, betraying a resolve that was still, in parts, raw and untested. In the background, Cashion's presence was a silent pillar of strength. His gaze, unwavering and intense, spoke volumes more than any retort could. As Marcus's eyes roved over her with insolent curiosity, Cashion moved imperceptibly closer. The heat of his proximity radiated like a tangible shield, a protective aura that insisted on the sanctity of what they shared. His silent assertion, firm and unyielding, made it abundantly clear. His claim was not merely a whim or an idle fancy, but a solemn decree that protected both his honor and Seline's fragile defiance. Marcus, undeterred, leaned in further, his voice dropping to a husky whisper meant only for her ears. "Tell me, healer, do you feel it? The mark still burning on your skin, proof of a bond you cannot fathom? Or do you pretend it's nothing more than a fleeting sensation?" His words stirred turbulent images within Seline. The intimate memories of that fateful touch, the quiet promise of a secret alliance, collided with her inner dread. Seline's internal dialogue roiled like a tempest. Every fiber of her being was a battleground between fear and determination, vulnerability, and the spark of unexpected desire. She could feel Cashion's protective energy, the warmth of his touch lingering on her arm, a lingering ember against the cool night air, as if to remind her that she was not alone, even while Marcus sought to isolate and undermine her. The rhythmic thrum of her heart resounded in her ears, a reminder of both the danger and the hope that pulsed through every shared glance between her and Cashion. Though her voice was soft, almost tentative at first, Seline found strength in her words. "My heart knows its own truth," she murmured, voice filled with a mix of defiance and fragile wonder. "I am not defined by your games, Marcus. I may carry this mark, a symbol of a connection I never chose, yet now cannot ignore. But that does not mean I am lost or weak. I will decide what it means for me." Her declaration, though laden with vulnerability, carried an unexpected spark of self-assurance that even she hadn't fully recognized before. Cashion's expression shifted imperceptibly, a silent acknowledgement of her inner fire. No words were exchanged between them. Instead, his steady, intense gaze filled the silence that followed, a gaze that spoke of promises kept and battles yet to be fought. The darkness around them seemed to pulse, the night itself bearing witness to this unspoken exchange of loyalty and forbidden yearning. And then, amid the charged confrontation, an unexpected moment of vulnerability unfurled. Marcus's smirk faltered momentarily when a single tear, glistening like a drop of midnight dew, traced a path along Seline's cheek. In that small, unguarded moment, the delicate barrier between her public defiance and private pain crumbled. It was a revelation that struck the onlookers silent, a reminder that even the strongest hearts could be wounded, that behind every declaration of independence lay the quiet ache of longing, and that the tether between Seline and Cashion was more than a simple claim. It was a profound connection born of mutual solace and shared danger. As Marcus stepped back, his words dying into the night, the atmosphere pulsed with the tension of unspoken possibilities. In the interplay of light and shadow, loyalty and betrayal, Seline realized that the game of power was far more intricate than she had ever imagined, and that her fate, now entwined with Cashion's silent decree, hung precariously in the balance of a forbidden, burning connection. The night shrouded the village square in a tapestry of flickering torches and deep shadows, transforming the familiar space into a battlefield of whispered threats and lingering grudges. The torches, mounted along the weathered stone walls, cast erratic dancing light over the assembled crowd, each flame a silent herald of the storm to come. In the cool embrace of darkness, every face in the square bore the mark of unease, their eyes darting between one another, as if trying to decipher the ominous signals in the shifting light. At the center of this charged arena, the figures of Cashion and Marcus loomed like twin avatars of fate. Cashion, the silent alpha whose very presence exuded an unspoken command over both nature and men, stood with measured calm. His broad shoulders and lean, imposing frame were silhouetted by the chaotic play of light and shadow. Nearby, Marcus stood with a dangerous smirk, his posture radiating defiance as he surveyed the gathering crowd, a throng that swelled with a mix of anxious anticipation and quiet dread. Between them, the air itself seemed to vibrate with a heavy tension, laden with the weight of past transgressions and the promise of imminent conflict. Cashion's mind, as much as his eyes, absorbed every detail of the scene before him. Each flicker of torchlight played across the resolute faces of his enforcers, their weapons glinting ominously, a stark reminder that every word, every gesture, had the power to unbalance the delicate order of the pack. He could feel the silent murmur of the crowd like a heartbeat, a collective pulse that throbbed with fear, anger, and the raw potential for rebellion. In his inner monologue, echoes of ancient vows and quiet rituals of power reverberated. This duel was not just a clash of wills between two men, but a reckoning that would redefine the very structure of their world. Around the perimeter of the AR, square-armed enforcers shifted with fluid precision. Their eyes were cold, unyielding, and each movement was as deliberate as a chess piece set upon a board. They formed a silent phalanx of loyalty and intimidation, the click of armor and the steady grip on hilted blades punctuating the thick, expectant silence. The crowd itself, caught between awe and alarm, huddled in tight clusters, members whispering, among themselves, their voices low and trembling, as if afraid that even a murmur might ignite the spark of open conflict. Marcus's voice cut through the hush like a sharpened blade as he stepped forward, his tone dripping with provocative challenge. "Cashion," he declared, his words echoing off the ancient stones. "Tonight the time has come to prove whose will truly rules over our fate. Will you stand by the mere promise of power, or will you show us the strength you claim?" His challenge was as much for the masses as it was for his rival, a calculated provocation designed to undermine the bond between Cashion and those who followed him, and a direct test of his rival's unspoken resolve. Cashion's expression remained unreadable, his eyes narrowing ever so slightly with the gravity of the confrontation. Every glance exchanged in that tense moment was a silent verse in a dangerous dialogue. With each measured breath, the space between the two alphas seemed to contract, as if destiny itself was drawing them inexorably closer to the moment of truth. The atmospheric pressure in the square felt almost oppressive. Each flicker of the torches, each murmur from the crowd, emphasized that this was a turning point, not only in their personal conflict, but in the fate of the entire pack. Within his mind, Cashion reflected on the stakes at play. This was more than a contest of personal pride. This was a battle for the very fabric of the pack's order. His silent authority had long been the glue that held the disparate elements of their society together, and any challenge to that authority was a threat that reverberated across every member of the clan. The very survival of their way of life now hung in the balance, teetering on the edge of a knife forged in ambition and primal desire. As the charged silence deepened, sensory impressions melded into a single, overwhelming sensation. The cool, night air mingled with the metallic tang of impending bloodshed, and the soft murmur of the crowd was punctuated by the steady heartbeat of a world on the brink. Every rustle of fabric, every gleam of steel in the torchlight, carried with it an unspoken promise of violence and transformation. In that spellbinding prelude to chaos, a nearly tangible silence enveloped the square, a silence that both calmed and terrified. The stage was set for the inevitable showdown, and every soul present seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the spark that would ignite the conflagration. As Marcus's challenge hung in the air like a dark omen, and Cashion's unwavering gaze met his with an intensity that promised retribution, the moment stretched into an eternity of possibility. In that fragile pause, it was clear that the forthcoming duel would not only determine the fate of two powerful men, but would also cast long shadows over the future of the pack. A future where personal destiny and collective order merged in an unstoppable storm. Under the shattered remnants of that charged silence, The air exploded into a torrent of raw power and fierce determination. Cashion and Marcus clashed at the heart of the village square, their confrontation igniting the night with kinetic fury. Every movement between them was a violent ballet, a collision of wills underscored by the crackling, primal energy of unspoken passion and rivalry. Marcus lunged first, his figure surging forward with a predator's hunger. His hand, rough and unyielding, sought to seize control as he swung a brutal punch. Cashion parried with the fluid precision of a master warrior, deflecting the blow with his forearm. A shift so rapid it blurred against the dim light of the torches. The metallic taste of impending blood hung in the air, and the sound of clashing. Limbs echoed through the square like a war cry. In a flurry of precise strikes and deft blocks, the two alphas engaged in a savage duel. Marcus's arrogance was evident in every calculated move, a confident barrage meant to subdue his rival quickly, while Cashion's counterattacks radiated a cold, measured intensity. Each strike and parry resonated with power, fists meeting, chests, feet kicking against hardened ground, and blades briefly flashing in the torchlight. Their battle was a symphony of violence, where every gasp and grunt built a crescendo of defiance and retribution. Cashion's eyes, dark and blazing with molten determination, locked onto Marcus as his movements grew more deliberate. With each decisive riposte, he reminded both his rival and the assembled pack that true power was not rooted merely in brute force, but in controlled, unwavering resolve. The clash of their bodies was punctuated by shouts and the stark sound of flesh meeting flesh, a violent testament to the ancient struggle for dominance and redemption. Amid the explosive melee, Seline stood on the fringes of the chaos, a silent, anguished witness to the fury unfolding before her. Every blow that landed, every near miss, resonated within her heart. The raw violence was more than just a test of physical prowess. It was a declaration of loyalty, a reassertion of order amid the unruly tides of ambition. She watched, horrified yet transfixed, as Marcus's sneers and taunts crumbled into grimaces of pain and shock with each resounding strike from Cashion. Her eyes stung with tears, yet they burned with the conflicted pride of a healer whose destiny was now inextricably bound to the tumult of war. As the duel deepened, Marcus's overconfidence began to falter. His aggressive blows, once so sure, were now met with the implacable defense of Cashion's refined strength. Every parried attack, every staggered step, chipped away at his smug veneer until his movements became erratic, a glimpse of vulnerability seeping through his hardened exterior. The crowd watched in murmuring silence. The atmosphere shifted palpably as the tide turned, and the balance of power, imperceptibly at first, began to tilt decisively in favor of the silent alpha. In a climactic moment, charged with the intensity of both retribution and redemption, Cashion stepped forward with a decisive, controlled fury that electrified the air. With a swift, almost balletic motion, he intercepted a desperate swing from Marcus, then twisted his arm expertly and drove him to the ground with a resounding thud that shook the very cobblestones beneath them. The impact was thunderous, and Marcus's arrogant defiance shattered in that instant, replaced by a pained, humbled stare that spoke of defeated ambition. The violent crescendo subsided into an eerie, expectant silence as Marcus lay still, his rage deflated and his posture a crumpled monument to the relentless force that had just humbled him. Cashion's actions radiated more than violence. They sent a clear, unyielding message to the pack and to every onlooker. Loyalty and true strength were not defined by crude displays of aggression, but by the quiet, unbreakable commitment to protect and to lead. His gaze, still smoldering with the fire of battle, swept over the assembled enforcers and the restless crowd, leaving no doubt that the order was shifting. In that fraught moment of restitution, Seline's heart pounded a lamenting rhythm in her ears. The adrenaline that coursed through the square mingled with a deep, poignant sorrow, a mourning for the loss of innocence and the irrevocable transformation of the bonds that tied them all. For a brief, aching heartbeat, she recognized the profound cost of power and ambition. The price of redemption was measured in scars, both visible and hidden. As the flickering torches began to regain their steadier glow, casting long shadows of both victor and vanquished, the scene held one final electrifying detail. With Marcus subdued and his challenge silenced, the pack's loyalties seemed to quiver on a delicate threshold, a threshold from which all would either rise anew or fall into an uncertain abyss. In that charged aftermath, as Cashion lowered his arm and surveyed his work with quiet resolve, Seline felt the gravity of an unspoken promise. The balance of power had irrevocably shifted, and with it, her destiny, and that of the entire pack, was forever altered by the clash of dominance and the bittersweet moment of redemption. The chaos slowly subsided as the first light of dawn began to stain the edges of the village square with a subtle, hesitant glow. In the wake of the fierce confrontation, the air now felt heavy with both relief and lingering sorrow. Marcus lay bruised and defeated on the cold cobblestones, his wounded pride as palpable as the physical pain etched across his face. The raucous fervor of battle had dwindled, leaving behind the quiet whispers of a community forever altered by the night's events. Cashion, still adorned with the cool residue of battle, surveyed the scene with a measured calm. His powerful frame, though marked by fatigue, exuded an unyielding strength that commanded respect and reassured those around him. The torches, now steady in their glow, illuminated his expression, a mix of solemn triumph and cautious vigilance. Every scar, every breath he took in that solemn hour, spoke of the high cost of power and the delicate balance that now hung in the air. In a secluded corner of the square, where the tumult had yet to reach, Seline and Cashion found a rare moment of intimacy amid the lingering dust. The world around them was hushed, the collective breath of the pack held in anticipation. Seline's eyes, still glistening with remnants of unshed tears and the gleam of newfound resolve, met Cashion's with a quiet intensity. No words were necessary, as their shared glance conveyed volumes, the promise of safety, of mutual understanding, and the unspoken vow that their fates, now forever intertwined, would stand together against whatever came next. Cashion's hand reached out slowly, almost reverently, to brush against the mark he had left on Seline's skin, a faint, burning symbol that pulsed softly under his touch. In that delicate caress, Seline felt a torrent of emotions, the lingering warmth of his passion, the quiet strength of his protection, and the bittersweet weight of what had been sacrificed in that violent clash. The mark was not merely a reminder of a single fateful moment. It was a covenant, a subtle promise that no matter how dark the road ahead, they would endure together. "Seline," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, as if sharing a secret meant solely for her. "This bond we share, it's not just a mark on your skin. It's the proof that even in chaos, there is something worth fighting for." His words, tender yet imbued with an unwavering authority, sank deep into her soul, forging an unbreakable link that transcended the physical. In that silent communion, amidst the remnants of blood and dust, both understood that their connection had become a beacon, an anchor amidst the swirling uncertainties of their world. Seline's internal resolve hardened as she listened to his quiet assurances. She silently vowed, with every beat of her racing heart, that she would not succumb to the relentless tide of chaos or be diminished into a mere pawn in the power struggles that had overtaken her life. Her mind swirled with the duality of her existence. Once a humble healer whose sole purpose was to mend physical wounds, now a symbol of defiance, a living testament to the fragile hope that could emerge from even the most brutal of storms. Yet even as a tender calm settled between them, an inescapable edge of uncertainty persisted. Marcus's threat, though momentarily stilled on the cold ground, remained a spectral presence, an ominous reminder that the night's violent reckoning was only one chapter in a larger saga of power and betrayal. As the distant murmurs of the Crowd began to fade, and the first rays of the sun caressed the ancient stones with golden light. A final, unsettling thought clung to the air. The future was murky and uncharted, fraught with both peril and possibility. While their silent promise kindled a spark of hope in Seline's heart, the unyielding specter of Marcus's lingering menace whispered that this battle was far from over. Shadows stirred in corners unseen, and the delicate tranquility of the dawn could vanish in an instant should old wounds be reopened. The uneasy calm carried a single potent question: would the fragile alliances forged tonight withstand the inevitable storms of treachery and ambition, or would they be shattered by the relentless forces of a pack desperate to claim its dominion? In that final, breathless moment before the world awoke fully to the consequences of the night, Seline's gaze lingered on the faint burn of the mark, a touch that had ignited both passion and promise. As she looked into Cashion's unwavering eyes, filled with a resolute determination and a silent, stirring empathy, she knew that the journey ahead would demand courage beyond measure. And while the threat of Marcus still loomed like a dark omen over the horizon, the seed of their bond had been sown, a bond that might yet flourish in the light of a new day, even if the darkness was far from defeated. With that lingering, poignant thought echoing in her heart, the dawn's first light began to break over the village, leaving all who beheld it with both hope and trepidation for the uncertain future that lay ahead. As the soft light of dawn slowly reclaimed the horizon, the remnants of the night faded into a bittersweet memory, a tapestry woven from threads of power, love, and destiny. In this quiet epilogue, Seline and Cashion stood at the crossroads of transformation, their journey etched into every breath and every lingering touch. The violent echoes of conflict, the tender promises whispered in darkness, and the raw pulse of unspoken bonds had merged to create a new future, a future that shimmered with hope, even as shadows of uncertainty loomed. Seline, once content to heal in solitude and shun the tangled webs of pack politics, had discovered within herself a fierce resilience. Her days as a humble healer had merged with an awakened spirit that no longer ran from conflict, but rather embraced it as a catalyst for change. The mark on her skin, a quiet testament to the connection with the enigmatic Cashion, had transformed from a symbol of imposed fate to one of chosen destiny, a symbol of unity in the midst of chaos. Cashion, the silent alpha whose presence had commanded realms both seen and unseen, now carried the weight of a deeper burden, one that was as tender as it was formidable. His decisive actions and protective embrace had redefined the delicate balance of power within the pack, forging a path that would challenge old traditions and rewrite ancient vows. In the glint of his eyes, there now lay not only the cold fire of authority, but also the gentle glow of redemption and compassion, a duality that resonated with the hearts of those willing to look beyond the surface. Together, their intertwined destinies had become a beacon of defiance against the relentless forces of betrayal and ambition. Their silent promise, born amidst the clamor of conflict and sealed in shared vulnerability, held the power to mend not only individual wounds, but also the fractured spirit of an entire community. In their union was the unspoken message that true strength is found not in the absence of pain, but in the courage to face it, hand in hand, heart with heart. Yet even as the morning light began to creep over the ancient trees, an undercurrent of mystery persisted, an echo of the lingering danger that Marcus's unyielding threat still cast upon them. The forest beyond, bathed in the moon's pale afterglow, stood as a silent witness to promises made in darkness and challenges yet to be met. It whispered secrets on the wind, hinting that the battle for power and the quest for love were far from over. In this reflective moment, as the world awoke to a new day, the forest's deep, impenetrable silence held one final potent question. In a realm where danger and desire forever entwine, can the fragile spark of hope kindle a lasting revolution? The answer, as elusive as the soft luminescence of the distant moon, remained suspended in the cool air, a promise of continuing tales, waiting to be unfolded in the hearts of those who dared to dream of a destiny reshaped by courage and passion.